Hi guys, Team RC 3D Prints here, and for this video, for this workshop video, we are going to look at these things. We're going to look at the front drive shafts. Now, on this truck, you've only got universal jointed drive shafts on the front because you've got the solid rear axle. On a lot of cars, things like the X-Max and that, you've got 4 of these because you've got 2 on the front and 2 on the back. But we're just going to show you just some general servicing tips and what to do on these. It's relatively straightforward, but I've had a few people ask a few questions on this on some of the other videos. We did touch on this when we done our little 2-wheel drive modification because it was really a rebuild video sort of linked into that when we put the car back together. But we'll show you start to finish what we would do with these. So the first job is I am going to take the body shell off. In actual fact, you don't need to take the body shell off. You can do it without taking the body shell off. But just to make it easier for you to see what's going on, I am going to remove the body shell. Now, I'm sure you all know how to remove the body shell on this. You've got the 12 screws, 4 there, 4 there. Sorry, 4 on the front bonnet. You've got 2 on the back behind there, 2 right at the back. And then if you use them, we don't actually use the screws on here because we find it just breaks the body shell more. You've got the 2 screws either side on there. I'm sure you don't need to see me taking that off. So we'll remove the body shell. Obviously you need to do the little wiggle around the light bar to remove it. And then we'll be back with the body shell off. So we've removed the body shell. You can see we've got the cars naked, no body shell. So we're going to look at these drive shafts. So the first thing to do is to remove your wheel. 8mm spanner just removes that, and then your wheel comes off as easy as that. Now I apologise if there's some whirring going on in the background. Our 3D printing side is going full steam at the moment. We're printing these nice wheel centres for one of our local drift racers. A few different designs there. And they've all come out really nice. We've got quite a few of them to do. So that's going full tilt at the moment. So to get to this, first things first, you need to then be able to remove your wheel hex. Now, this may slide off like that. Mine has. If that's tight, and this is the reason I put the nut back on, just give that a gentle tap with a pair of pliers or a hammer or something like that. Just on there. But make sure you put the nut back on. Otherwise, you'll damage your thread and you won't be able to get the nut, or you'll damage the nut. It just needs to have the nut on there to get that off. So that's off. And we will take off our hex. And there's the pin. That may be a difficult push out. That may be really tight, or it may come out very loosely. You may find that's bent. If that's bent, replace it. Now we need to actually get the drive shaft off. The easiest way to do this is to remove either the top link, the top mounting ball joint, or the bottom. Now you can remove the bottom without having to remove the body shell. I'm going to remove the top because it's a little bit easier to see on camera. Good quality 2mm hex driver. As anything on the truck or any work I'm doing, always make sure you've got decent quality tips on your drivers, otherwise you just round off the bolts. It's just not worth it. So there's the bolt, comes out like that, and the hub assembly slides away like that. You can then push your drive shaft back, and here is our drive shaft, which we will now work on. So here we have all the parts that we've took off the car except the wheel. There's our top bolt. Don't need to worry about that. We'll put that to one side. Here's the hex. Now you could see if this was plastic, I don't recommend the plastic ones. I would always upgrade to the alloy ones. But if you've got any damage to your hex, you really should replace it because you just will end up messing up where it mounts to the wheel. But we don't really need to look at that. The nut does actually have a nylock ring on there. So in actual fact, they are realistically only good for a few uses really before that nylock part goes. But I've never had a problem with the wheel nuts coming off because you've got that serrated part on there, so they actually lock onto the wheel anyway, so that's not a problem. So here is our main parts to our drive shaft. So here is our roll pin, which the hex locates in. We then can remove the pin which holds the universal joint part together. This bit is normally encapsulated with a bearing so it can't come out. There are certain versions of this where they actually have a little grub screw in there. You see there, they'll have a little grub screw in there which will hold that pin in, and you would need to remove that. But on the on the Traxxas UDR, you don't have that. So we can just push out that little sleeve, and effectively that is all our parts to our drive shaft. I will start at this end though. First thing you want to look at is I would give it all a good clean. This has already had a bit of a clean before we came on camera. Look at your roll pin on the end here. It should be round. If it's got some flats on it there, or if it looks more like a square, it needs replacing. Now you can push these out with a vise. You can just gently push these out and replace it with a new roll pin. If this is started to wear, would replace it, because the problem that you will have is your drive cups start to get a groove in them. Now I've got a picture here of the ones on this car, and as you can see there is actually starting to get a groove wearing on it. So we are going to have to probably look to replace the drive cups. The pin seems okay, but I may replace the pin as well. It will affect the truck because it will make the fact that the drive shaft cannot move up and down the drive cup as freely. So that's your first part to look at. Next part is your sleeve. Is that a nice tight smooth fit in there? No wear on that. No, that's all okay. And similarly, another point which will wear is the pin, when it goes through there, has that hole worn. We can check, easy way to check, we'll put that pin in, and as you can see, oh, it's not fully home, so there it is, fully home. There's no wear, there's no space around it. If that hole had become elongated, then you need to replace the drive axle, and once that starts to become elongated, it will just get worse much quicker. And it's worth noting this part of the truck will get much more wear if you're running them in damp conditions, because you get the dirt in here and it then acts like a grinding paste. It wears these parts much quicker. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to put this back together, and I'm going to show I use a small amount of grease on these parts. It just makes it slightly smoother, only a very small amount, because you don't want the grease to attract too much dirt. So what I use a black moly grease, moly lithium grease. So you don't want to use too much at all. So what we will do, we'll get the sleeve out of there, and just a small amount, I don't know if you can see, I've only got a very small amount on there, and then we will just put it through the drive, turn it round, and we'll just wipe off the excess. Okay, we'll just wipe the excess off there. Then we will put the pin back through. So I like to put just a small amount of grease on this pin before we pass it through here. Again, I will wipe any excess off. Any that you can see, I will wipe off. So it's very much, you can barely see it. And to me, you can actually feel that now feels smoother than when I rebuilt or when it came off the truck. So now it's just a simple process of the reverse of what we've just done. Now, some people put a little bit of grease on here where it goes into the drive cup. I know you can't see the drive cup on this camera angle. I don't bother. If you've got, on some of the bigger trucks where you have a drive shaft boot which covers these parts up, then you can put much more grease in and you haven't got to worry about the dirt getting in. But grease will attract dirt, so it's a very much a balancing act. And it's not a bad time now. Well, what I would always do is just check your bearings. They just pop out. You can see that one's got quite a bit of dirt around it. Just give it a little bit of a wipe off camera. Not a very good wipe. But you can then see this outer race, which is larger than the inner race, which is larger than the inner, just goes over that pin, so that pin can't come out. And you can just put that on there and use feel. Does it feel free? Yes, that's okay. You could put a little bit of bearing oil on there if you want, and we'll just pass that through there. Does it feel, if it feels graunchy, I don't even bother rebuilding these bearings. You can take the shields out and clean them with bearing cleaner. I just replace them. They're as cheap as chips. You don't need to buy the bona fide Traxxas parts. Just measure the sizes and get it from there. And that brings me on to a good point with these roll pins. You can get the proper Traxxas parts and they cost, well, not a massive amount of money, but they're quite expensive in relation to the fact that you can measure these pins and you can buy them for pennies off eBay or the likes. And I have a various range of sizes and lengths, so I've always got the right pins. I don't have to go out and buy the Traxxas parts. And some good model shops will also have a good selection of these rather than you having to buy the correct Traxxas, lossy, arm or whatever part. Now I've put that in the axle there, but I don't think I've got enough. No, I haven't got enough leverage to get it actually into the drive cup, so we'll just remove that from there. Now, there's an important point here. This will fall out if you're not careful, so you want to make sure you hold it that way so the pin can't come out. So you need to slide the head of the drive shaft in. Sort of bearing fell out there, not too worried about that. We can then tease in the drive shaft, making sure we don't let that pin slip out. Now, sod's law. Oh no, I think we've got it in. We've got it in there without that pin sliding out. You'll be careful because it can still fall out yet. So what I'm actually going to do, rather than put this bit on, I'm actually going to put on my out drive shaft pin. Again, as we said, if that was bent, that would get replaced as well. And I'm going to push on my axle. Now that will stop this moving over and the pin falling out. Then it's just a simple case of lining up your ball stud, putting your bolt back in, and then doing this up. If you really wanted to be finicky over it, what I would do, I'd remove the shocks and make sure this all is very free, because you might tighten this up too much and it binds the suspension up, but I'm not going to worry about that. So here is our wheel back on. You need to be a little bit careful that you don't push or haven't lost any pins, a drive pin from it. Nut back on. And no doubt the eagle-eyed of you will have noticed actually when I put that back together, this wheel was actually freewheeling. The drive shaft had actually come out of the drive cup. So just off camera I've just put that back in. So you just need to be aware of that. So if this wheel does just turn with no resistance, you know you've got a problem. So thanks for watching. Another workshop video there that we've done. Quite a simple one that, but it's worth doing the maintenance on these universal joints because they do get quite a bit of wear. They are very exposed there as well. So it's a simple job. Probably in a quarter of an hour you can do both of them very quickly, and even just a basic cleanup's always a good idea. This truck's quite dusty, but it's not too bad. But thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed that video, then please do subscribe. We'll be doing more of these workshop videos soon. If there's anything specific you would like us to look at, then leave a comment. Or if you need any help on anything on the UDR trucks or just RC in general, we've got quite a wealth of knowledge, or quite an access to other people's knowledge as well. So thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon.